Good morning and welcome to Behind the Screen. We are talking about Savage Pathfinder this morning. I've had some requests from this from people in the channel, mainly Rook, who is a huge fan of both Pathfinder and Savage Worlds. And I got my boxes in. We're going to do an unboxing of both the Savage Pathfinder core box and of the Rise of the Rune Lords box. Now, if you find any of this interesting, you should go over to Kickstarter and look, or type into Kickstarter Savage Worlds Pathfinder. They are currently running a new Kickstarter for the next expansion to this. They're doing the Advanced Player's Guide as well as the Curse of the Crimson Throne. And yes, John, I love Savage Worlds. We're running Savage Worlds on Mondays for on the stream. We're doing Deadlands. I mean, you can see kind of right here, I've got a ton of Savage Worlds around. And this is something I'm hoping to get to the table, possibly the stream, sometime near in the future. So I've had a couple of questions about, well, what is Savage Worlds Pathfinder? I thought Pathfinder was its own game and Savage Worlds was its own game. Yes, but much like Savage Rifts, or really Savage Rifts is the one that comes to my mind, what you have with Savage Pathfinder is the team at Pinnacle took the core experience of Pathfinder, classes, races, magic items, the monsters, all of that, and the world of Golarion, and they converted it into Pathfinder, or into Savage Worlds. So you're getting the Golarion experience, and you're getting the Golarion adventure path of Rise of the Rune Lords, one of the most classic adventure paths, I would say, of the last 20 years. I think Rise of the Rune Lords sort of defined the adventure path. I know they did a couple beforehand, things like the Shackled City or Age of Worms, but for me, Rise of the Rune Lords kind of stands out. I remember standing in Complete Games and Hobbies and picking up the first one, Burnt Offerings. This was when there wasn't even a Pathfinder game at the time. It was an adventure path for 3.5, and yes, it was. It is. It's a big campaign, and it's wonderful. A lot of people have that great memory of playing through Rise of the Rune Lords. Curse of the Crimson Throne was a good one. There was a lot. The quality at Paizo doesn't vary a lot, in my opinion, on their adventure paths. They've got a great formula. They've got a great team of writers. Now, some of them, the earlier ones, even in Pathfinder Second Edition, it takes them a little while to kind of get into the use of writing them. So like Age of Ashes, I think, is a good adventure path, but you need a lot more tweaking of it than, say, Strength of Thousands of the new ones. Or what was because they came back to Rise of the Rune Lords. Was it Return of the Rune Lords near the end? I will let somebody in chat pop that up. Yes, John is saying that the Advanced Player's Guide includes the 6 new classes, a bunch of new magic weapons and items, including intelligent weapons, and Curse of the Crimson Throne. Yes, which is amazing. The other nice thing about this is for people who don't like the crunch of Pathfinder, who don't want to convert to Pathfinder 2, or who like the idea of having a very robust fantasy setting that lets them, but still using their favorite system of Savage Worlds, this is a great way to jump into this, because this is sort of a snapshot of Golarion as it was a decade ago. Yeah, maybe over a decade ago. So, hey, Matt and JM, or I am JM. Hey, Matt, good to see you. So, let's see what's in this box. So, the first thing we got is a bunch of tokens. So, what I like about this is the Deadlands ones are acrylic, but they give you like all of the templates that you need for this. And then, although you don't necessarily need them in Savage Worlds, I think there's an acknowledgement that at least the Pathfinder crowd that's coming loves putting tokens on the board. And so you get fatigue, defend, shaken, aim, entangled, wounded, bound, and distracted tokens. If you followed any of my Zane Talks Torg videos with about the Torg unboxings, there's something very familiar about how these boxes are all put together. Got a map of the Inner Sea, which I have the new map of the Inner Sea for Pathfinder 2nd Edition on my wall. It'd be kind of cool to put this one next to it. As always, you get a set of dice with this one's really, your wild card die is always different, and this is a black die with gold pips and a dragon for the ace. Ammo counters, which All right. I've never actually used the ammo counters in any of the games that I've run, but if you use them, more power to you. You get a ton of bennies with the cover, the Wayne Reynolds cover art of Pathfinder on one side, and then a variety of different images on the other. Again, if you're a fan of Torg, you can see that there's a little bit of overlap uh, back and forth. I have people count ammo, Ben. I'm just saying I've never used the little ammo counters. Ben. Wait for it, Rook. You will not be disappointed. So, else do we get in this? Well, the first thing that you see when you open this, you have 4 boxes sitting on top. Here are all of the power cards. Here's the action deck, which is Zane loves this. It's it's the deck of cards like you have in Deadlands, but each image is a piece of Pathfinder art. And I think one of the nice things about this is if you are coming to Savage Worlds from Pathfinder, you're going to see a lot of familiar art. The chase deck, which is really cool. The status cards, so if you don't want to use the tokens or you don't know what the tokens mean, you can use the status tokens. Here is all of your archetypes, so it's all quick character sheets. You can just hand these out. And the other thing that I was pointing out to my friend Paul, who was looking at this with me yesterday, is 3.5, 3.0, Pathfinder, Pathfinder 2. Their stat blocks get very complicated for bestiary creatures and for characters. This is everything you need to play a paladin. This is your starting paladin character on one card. Savage Worlds provides a simplicity without losing the tactical nature of the game. Now, I've read through the Pathfinder Savage Worlds rule book, and one of the things that was very interesting to me is they did not try to replicate every spell in the game. They're leaning heavily into Savage Worlds, so you still have Bolt with a ton of new ways to define Bolt with additional power points and enhancements to get a lot of the fun spellcasting effects that you would want out of a Gygaxian fantasy game using the Savage Worlds rules. We've got a GM screen, which is gorgeous. I'm hoping this will come through on the screen. All right, let's see here. John says, do the archetype cards have all the recommended advancements? Let's see. They don't have them on the cards, but I know in the adventure or in the rule book, yes, they do. What they have in there is they give you an advancement track, almost like you would if you want to just follow this so you can have your paladin level up the way that you would typically in a D20 game. They give you like just this list of advancements that you would take, at each tier. They redid Hollow's Last Hope, which was one of the first adventures, if I'm remembering correctly, for Pathfinder when it first came out. You then get the beautiful bestiary and the rule book. And much like the Savage Worlds core rulebook, this is everything you need to play. So unlike, say, like Deadlands, where you would need the core Savage Worlds rulebook to play, if you just want to get in here, this is a complete game. So yeah, to answer John's question, let's take a look here. It's all handled by class edges, if that makes sense. So you pick everyone starts with a class edge in this game. So let's flip to, I've been using the Paladin as the example. So the Paladin says that you have to be novice, you have to have a strength of at least a D6 and a spirit at least a D6. You start with a vow. You get an aura of courage, a code of honor, detect evil, and smite evil. And then you can take the mystic powers, which is what gives you some miracles. You can take mercy and mount at seasoned, veteran, and heroic, respectively. And then they have a set advancement track if you want to level like Sela up. So, at your first advancement, you're going to take your intimidation die to D8 and occult to a D4. So, and again, if you are familiar at all with Savage Worlds, the layout, the artwork, this is all just top quality. Again, you have the comic book trade paperback size with spot UV or UV spotting on the cover to make it really look great. You can't be the worst paladin, though. That's taken. Well, who is the worst paladin? That's an interesting question. I've played with a couple of paladins that I've been able to cause to fall, but I don't know if that necessarily makes them the worst. Drowned carrying rope. That is a... I think we just need to have Rook on here and have him tell stories sometime, much like we did with Ben. So, yes, we are doing Padre. We are going to be looking at... Let me pack this one up. We're going to be looking at the Rise of the Rune Lords unboxing as well. So again, this is an expensive buy to get into. I'm not gonna lie. It's it's a $200 buy to get into Savage Worlds Pathfinder. But with everything Pinnacle does, you're never feeling like you're not getting your money's worth out of it. If you buy it from Pinnacle, you also get the PDFs. I'll put a link in the show notes. I don't know if these are available on Amazon, but if they are, we'll put a link in there for as well for the affiliate link if that works. Digital cost is actually, that's an interesting question. I'm going to push that to John and see if John or JD can pull up the digital cost. Or Padre, you bought the Rise of the Rune Lords expansion. So this is the Rise of the Rune Lords box set. The great cover box is hefty, and it comes with sort of what you'd expect. And actually, I think this ends up being cheaper than the original Rise of the Rune Lords, because the original Rise of the Rune Lords was $120. This is $90 for the physical box, and it doesn't come with it comes with more things than just the fun things that you would expect in the adventure. So, right off the bat, what do we got here? A beautiful map of Sandpoint, where a lot of the adventure takes place, and something that I'm really glad to see in with this adventure that did not come with the original ones unless you were willing to chop up your books. Here is a ton of handouts to cut up and hand out to your players. So the clues, the journal entries, this is, much like the horror at Headstone Hill, you have everything you need to give the players the physical clues and handouts, give them something tactile to interact with. Yes, and Pinnacle does a great job at that. They're not part of Bits and Mortar, but as John pointed out, if you buy any of this from your local game store, you send them a picture of your receipt, they will give you the digital set for buying the physical set. So you get to support local and still get the copies of the PDFs. Also, nope, I can't say that for certain. John, do we know if there is if they have a VTT? They do have a VTT for this. They run it on Foundry. Here's the Bestiary deck, just for Rise of the Rune Lords. So you have Karzog, the Claimer, all the way to Suto, the Elven Archer, Half-Elven Archer. So you have all of the monsters that you're going to need to run this adventure in a nice little deck ready for you. To show off for Rook, you get the campaign die that does have the Rune Lord star on it, which is another nice little touch. Pinnacle puts these nice little touches with the dice in everything. So the Rifts one came with the Coalition skull on it. The Deadlands one came with the Longhorn skull on it. But the Horror at Headstone Hill came with a headstone on it. So you get these little markers that you can use to make your wild card dice or switch them out that I really enjoy. Okay, so there is a VTT for Rise. It's completed on Fantasy Grounds up to like 4 and is about to drop on Foundry. I really dig Foundry. You've heard me talk a lot about it. And then you get all 6 adventures for Rise of the Rune Lords. Burnt Offerings, the Skinsaw Murders, Hook Mountain Massacre, the Fortress of the Stone Giants, the Sins of the Saviors, and the Spires of Zin Shalast. And again, they're in trade paperback form. They're a lot. I like the trade paperback size of these. And again, they're laid out much like all of the other Savage Worlds material. But still, if you've read through these originally, you're going to see a lot that is familiar, which is, great. For me, the goal would be to take what was cool about Rise of the Runelords and Pathfinder and still give you a fully Savage experience. And from what I've read in the core books, that's what you get with this pack. You get what you would expect. You get a fun, fast, Savage version of Rise of the Runelords. I'm actually really excited to reread through Rise of the Runelords and get Curse of the Crimson Throne, another great adventure path. And then I was not expecting this, but at the bottom of the box, there is one last book. So there's actually 7 books in here. And this is your guide to Varisia. So this is a sort of a travelogue, a overview of every place that you're going to go in Rise of the Runelords. So it covers Sandpoint and its history. It covers Magnamar and its history and the layout of the city. It covers Turtleback Ferry, and then it covers Zin Shalast. So you get all of this. You get the 6 adventures. You get the Guide to Varisia. You get the map, the deck, the die, and the handouts for $100, which, not gonna lie, it's a lot. But full color all the way through, well laid out, very usable, additional things that you did not have in the first one. I think it's a great buy. If you plan to run it, and you're like me or Rook or a lot of people in the chat, the physical components make this worth it. And there's just something nice about being able to put it on the shelf and pick it up, hold it in your hands. Right? They've done cognitive studies that we actually remember where things are at in a book based off the spatial. So you may not remember exactly what page, but it's on the right-hand side and it's about this far into the book. But you just don't get with a PDF. Now, on the flip side, PDFs are searchable. So if you can at least remember close terms, you can go through that. And another feature that they add to their PDFs that I really appreciate, shout out to Pinnacle. I wish more companies would do this. They give you access to the layers. So you can turn off the background images. You can turn off the all of the pictures and the boxes. So you could get just a blank black and white copy of the text if you do plan to print off some of these things. All right, so Padre, you backed digital for Curse of the Crimson Throne as well. I'm really excited about that one. Let's see what else we got. Cones of All right, so that is. Any questions from anyone in the chat about anything you would like to see or have me talk about on this box set? It's a lot. The thing is, it's massive. There's 2 boxes. The Pinnacle, the Pathfinder box is bigger than any other box I've received from Pinnacle, including the Deadlands box. It's about twice the size of the Deadlands box. So again, like I said, you are getting quality for what you're paying for. And the PDFs are very transportable and do require less storage space. This is true. I'm actually looking, I think if I remember, Free League is having their big sale, their big summer sale, and I'm looking at getting the Forbidden Lands Foundry stuff for like $30. You can get the entire core rules and both campaigns, the Raven's Purge and Bitter Reach, for $30 total. And so there's part of me that's like, I just want to get that so that I have those assets in Foundry. So, all right, quick question. Ben Feehan and at the very end of the episode, do Techno-Demon aspirants have mothers? Padre, I get that. Luckily for me, one, I have the studio now that houses over half of my collection, so it looks smaller inside the house. But also my wife knits, crochets, and makes cards. So we each have our rooms that are sort of dedicated to our hobby with shelves and books. And we sort of have this tacit agreement that as long as as long as they stay in their places, no one gets to complain about the other person's hobby if they sort of overflow. These shelves here, Restart. These are IKEA shelves. I think they make the background look nice. I can switch them out as we're running different games. You can see over here, some more Savage Worlds products, Deadlands and Rifts. We've got Torg, Deadlands, Forbidden Lands over here. I'm really bad at this, apparently, this pointing thing. So, yeah, I'm really excited to get this to the table. I have been wanting to run a Pathfinder 2 game. It is going to be very difficult for me to choose between running Pathfinder 2 or running Rise of the Rune Lords in Savage Worlds. I love the world of Golarion. It is a kitchen sink world, and when we get into high fantasy games, the genre of high fantasy in a couple of weeks, we're going to be talking about the kitchen sink sort of feeling. But that's for a later discussion. I do feel like Golarion has the feeling of a world that has, as my friend Richard would say, moss on it. Like it's grown, especially in Pathfinder 2, where they're like, hey, listen, 1 year, every year, 2 of these adventures have been going on. And in the decade since Pathfinder 1 came out, the world has been moving along 1 year at a time. And so the Golarion of Pathfinder 2 feels even deeper, for me, than, say, Forgotten Realms. Forgotten Realms has a lot of lore, but it doesn't feel as lived in to me as Golarion has. The dwarf you've never been able to play. Which dwarf? Do you have a dwarf in Isle that you are wanting to play, Padre? We may have to see if we can't get you into one of our maybe we can have you join the Bureau G game at some point in the future, or maybe another one-shot spin-off if you are free on a Tuesday night. Restart does have more costumes than he can possibly layer at once. On our Deadlands game on Monday, was it Deadlands that Dorothy Mantooth came up because someone's mother got insulted, or was that on the Torg game? But now I'm just going to assume that Ben's Technodemon, Kowalski's mother's name is like Dorothy Mantooth as a but we'll Tharkold that spelling way up, and then he can be like Dorothy Mantooth is a saint. So that brings us to an end of this episode of Behind the Screens. We are going to be talking about epic and heroic fantasy on Monday. We're going to be looking at the foundational stories that I would consider part of this genre. The ones that I posted in the Discord as the reading list include Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn by Tad Williams, The Belgariad and the Elenium by David Eddings, obviously Lord of the Rings and Wheel of Time. We had a great discussion on that. If you're not a member of the Iconic Patronage, please consider jumping over to patreon.com/iconic. Jump in on the discussions that we have on the Discord. It's a very lively Discord. There's always people chatting. You get to chat with everybody who plays in the games. You get to ask them questions about their character or their campaign. Right now on the Torg thread, people are discussing how are they going to act. How are the FET 5 actually going to deal with removing a Stela in Tharkold with 20 XP on average. So I'm really excited to see how that goes. We're going to be doing our next episode of Grand Campaign this Saturday at 8 a.m. Central. Richard, Josh, and I got really hopped up on coffee and discussed time management in role-playing games. So, come see us spaz out and chat about time management. It should be a good time. And then we'll be back on Monday with more Deadlands. Remember, we are off on Tuesday. For Torg, we'll be airing a rerun of the last episode, but we will be back on the following week with the removal of the Stela. So if you guys would like to see Savage Pathfinder get to the table at Iconic Studios so that we can do a short one or two shot, let me know. Let me know in the chat. Let me know in the comments. I'd love to be able to run something like this. If there are other games you would like to see us do as a one shot as we have time in the schedule, please let us know. There are a ton of games that we like talking about, and for me, I would run all of them, but I never know which ones to kind of bring to the table. So I would love to hear what people are thinking. I would love to do like a Savage Rifts one shot, a Zweihander one shot, do a little Forbidden Lands, Savage Pathfinder, like run through Hollow's Last Hope. I think that would be Savage TMNT would require a lot of mental. Well, actually, Restar. Now that you mention it, I am getting the superhero companion and the fantasy companion. I'm pretty sure I could put together 4 turtles and run you through. I would just have to say that my TMNT would be much more like the comic book and the Palladium version than sort of the zany cartoon that I grew up loving as well. So that would be very interesting. So thank you all for tuning in. We will be back on. Yes, Ben. I just see JM. Full stop. Type faster, my friend. I will say when the Pan Pacifica box comes in and we do another Zane Talks Torg, I'm pretty sure we're going to have something very, very close to be able to do some turtle stuff in Pan Pacifica and in Torg. Because again, much like Savage, Torg, you can do just about anything in. It's also interesting to me, we'll wrap this up with this, from a design perspective. I know Shane was involved in Torg Eternity. There is a lot of overlap between the Torg cargo crates and the way Pinnacle packages their crates. You get a lot of the same components. There's also mechanically some continuity between that, right? You have exploding dice. You have bennies that work in very much the same ways. The way wounds, the math is a little different, but again, the way wounds and soaking work in Savage Worlds is very similar to the way wounds and soaking works in Torg. So I think there's a reason why this is a great game for me, because I love the mechanics of Torg and the feel of Torg. Savage is another way to do that, but is far more open. I don't know that I would use the Torg system for anything else but the Torg universe, because it's so tied in with the universe. And then we kind of go over, Savage kind of opens up a lot more. And it's weird because I really love Savage and Torg, which are really high adventure, a lot of meta currency for the players to jump in and change things in their favor. I also love old school games where the dice fall where they may, and sometimes your wizard Brick has 1 hit point and 1 spell, and he gets that spell off and then is brutally killed. You got games like Zweihander and Warhammer Fantasy, which have a very dark and gritty feel. I just like good games. I like well-designed, good games. And what's always interesting to me is that the relationship that we talk about in the Grand Campaign between the rules, the GM, and the players can take a game that is not as well-designed and still give you a wonderful experience. So... Oh, interesting. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. He went from original Torg to Savage Worlds and then back to Torg Eternity. I don't know that I don't know that I knew that he worked on original Torg, but that makes a ton of sense. For me, my first experience with Shane's design was Deadlands. And so to kind of understand this overlap is now kind of a bouncing back and forth. It makes perfect sense. So as always, thank you to everyone who has jumped in there. Hey, Gabe, good to see you this morning. And so that brings us to a close. I will see you all on Tuesday where we talk about epic and heroic fantasy. What does the genre mean? What can we learn about the genre from these kind of exemplars? And start framing out what's the experience we would want to replicate at the table with our players. So I hope to see you on Saturday for more Grand Campaign, but you can always catch that on on our podcasts, which you can find on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, whatever you use for podcasts. We are also putting the actual play of Deadlands up on the podcast as well. And we are going to be going back to Heaston Hill on Monday, where we're going to see more of this wonderful Deadlands adventure that we're running through, the horror at Headstone Hill. We're going to see what happens when Wickers catches up with the man who killed him. So, until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. I'm JM, this is Iconic Production, and we will see you on Tuesday. Have a good one.